Alright, welcome back. 7 years ago, I was 16. My mom was leaving her job, which was being downsized, so my brothers and I went to her office to clear out all her stuff. The office was already barely occupied, with maybe 5 of the 20 cubicles in offices being decorated and lived in. The cubicles, which were more like rooms with 3 walls facing a hallway, were spacious and tall, especially when laying on the carpeted floor staring up. Liminal spaces, technically speaking, referred to a space that you occupy when in transition. A school, a train, a rehab can all exhibit the most literal examples of the phrase, and still occupy a partial amount of the definition when people refer to it. According to Cambridge Art, a liminal space is the time between the what was and the what's next. It is a place of transition, a season of waiting and not knowing. The phrase was popularized in 2019 when it was imposed onto the photo and story of the Backrooms, an anonymous post on the paranormal section of the export of 4chan. This is what inspired the phenomenon. The picture accompanying, which displays the beige carpets, the muted yellow, and the hue of the lights, ignited so many creatives and horror fans. The nostalgic and familiar yet ominous imagery embodied an emotion little discussed. The feeling is sometimes referred to as deja vu, but that's not right. Dreams of play places and memories of empty arcades have made you feel this way many times before, and now the feeling is recognizable and has a name. Urban Dictionary best described it with, something, someplace, a picture, or even a video game feels so ominous, yet so nostalgic. You think that you've been there before, but your brain weirdly denies it. The term evolved almost as quickly as it was introduced. It was demonstrated in countless media throughout our lives, from cartoons to video games to film and television. Shows like The Twilight Zone and Twin Peaks, not entirely unintentionally, evoked the feeling that liminal spaces evoke and demonstrate it through scenery and quiet moments. The Shining's production design and cinematography demonstrate an understanding of the nostalgic ambiguity that is woven throughout all these pieces of media. What entrances us about these pieces of art? Whether it be photography that displays a monotone, fluorescently lit children's playroom, the game Pools where you wander through an endless cavern of tiles and shallow pools, or the film Skinamarink, which uses its limited and minimalist filmmaking to create a feeling of tension, often underwriting many pieces about liminal spaces. SpongeBob! The first season of SpongeBob was creatively enriched. Season 1, episode 14A, entitled SB-129, is a prime example of that. Strangely experimental, it begins with Squidward trying to get away from SpongeBob and Patrick by going to the Krusty Krab while it's closed. He hides in a freezer after being followed by the two pals, and gets trapped and accidentally stuck 2,000 years in the future. The future displayed is cold and isolating. The feeling of nostalgia could be associated with the show's personal relationship to the viewer, but in a literal sense, this is a transition place for Squidward. As we continue, let's remember the definition of liminal spaces. A liminal space is a place of transition. The only other form of life in this future is a machine replica of SpongeBob, and Squidward begs the bot to find a way back. He's pointed to a time machine and goes through different eras. The next segment I'd like to look at is when Squidward breaks the time machine and is transported to a place of total emptiness. He's completely alone except for paper whiteness, which consumes everything except for the shapes and words alone appearing around Squidward. The aesthetics here are that of an abstract painting, and is familiar yet isolating. SpongeBob loved to use this feeling of isolation that, accidentally or not, created these liminal spaces throughout the show. Another episode from this season, episode 17B, titled Rock Bottom, involves SpongeBob taking the wrong bus and ending up in Rock Bottom, a place with wrong angles and anomalies abound. His bus only arrives when he's not near. There's a road that goes directly up, and everyone speaks in between raspberry mouth sounds. The Simpsons was the best at creating this ambiance, with them even fighting Fox to let their end credits play uninterrupted to not disturb the ambiance created. The episode Mother Simpson ends with Homer looking out to the sky. He had just met his mother, who he thought to be dead, and had to say goodbye to her again. She leaves and he's left in a field staring at the sky. It's deeply emotional, and the image has an incredibly moving quality to it, especially within context. As most cel animated series, anytime there is a few characters or just a background, it feels extremely eerie, nostalgic, and almost uncanny. Minecraft involves many aspects of liminality. The repeating patterns and open world aspect can bring you to vast open areas devoid of anything but the repeating environment. The music only enhances the atmosphere, with its ambient loop of subtle piano music. Overall, this game became a great example of the relaxing side of the comfort created within dreamy and nostalgic art. Witness Mr. Poopfart, a charter member of the fraternity of Gooners, a mousy little man whose passion is cheese, but who is conspired against by a cheesemaker and a mouse wife in a world full of kitty cats. But in just a moment, Mr. Fart will enter a world without cheesemakers, or mouse wives, or kitty cats, or anything else, in fact. He'll have the world all to himself, without anyone, in the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone is an incredible anthology mystery series from the 1950s, created by Rod Serling and existing as a television show, radio play, film, books, ride, and several more television shows. The original series had several episodes that could be seen through this lens of uncanniness and liminal spaces. The episode Time Enough at Last involves the death of everybody in the world, leaving our protagonist Henry with all the time in the world to read. This is all he wanted all his life. This scenario is extremely eerie and has many of the trappings that we are looking for, being completely isolated in a vast open environment. This is something repeated in many episodes, including Where Is Everybody?, where a man ends up in a town where he is completely alone. The Obsolete Man, where a man is on trial at a large table. And The After Hours, where a woman is locked in a store after hours and begins to become surrounded by mannequins. That last episode is also notable because it involves the use of the Uncanny Valley. But what is the Uncanny Valley? The Uncanny Valley is a phenomenon that involves a human, but it can also include objects or places that look like something but are slightly off. A mannequin is a great example, something that closely resembles the features of a person, and in the dark or from afar could fool you for a second. But there's something not exactly right. The gap between what should be and what is so minute and hard to point out that it creates this effect. And the relationship between the Uncanny Valley and liminal spaces is close. They feed each other and often exist at the same time. They both evoke this eerie, strange, and uncomfortable feeling. Another example of the Uncanny Valley is much of David Lynch's work, but specifically Twin Peaks, especially in scenes involving the Red Room, with characters speaking backwards. It's an isolating but dreamy feeling that only Lynch can realize, and often the thing that either makes you love the work of Lynch or be extremely off-put by it. Music includes interesting examples of this nostalgic, dreamy, off-putting feeling being displayed, and artists like The Caretaker can create something profound while having the specific feeling being the point. The art project of The Caretaker is thematically relevant, with it being a depiction of dementia through music. That's almost what a liminal space feels like knowing you should remember something that you can't. And artists like Boys of Canada can provide powerful examples while not specifically trying to. Their ambient project, which evokes strong feelings of nostalgia and melancholy, can be seen as a catalyst for many of the artists that occupy the dreamcore or weirdcore genres. Severance is a show that uses the concept of liminal spaces thematically to great effect. The aesthetics are directly inspired by the liminal space phenomenon, but also the philosophy. Pools is a walking simulator game where you wander through a vast network of hallways and pools, where you are completely isolated and all you can hear are your footsteps and splashes. Directly inspired by the art of abandoned pools, it created an extremely ambient and relaxing yet eerie mood. Exit 8 is another walking simulator that takes place in a metro station in Japan. The game involves many long corridors and hallways in the metro station, with the hallways repeating forever. You have to spot the difference and discover anomalies, being correct 8 times to get to the end of the station. The game is inspired by not only liminal spaces but also the Backrooms, which inspired the aesthetic liminal space trend. It has a film adaptation from Japan that is being released soon in New Zealand and Australia, and hopefully it'll be available everywhere soon. Speaking of which, The Backrooms is also a short film series on YouTube created by Kane, which is being made into a feature-length film as well. The series helped popularize the general concept and expanded the lore. The first episode is about a team creating a short film that falls through the ground and reality into an empty office building reminiscent of the original Backrooms photo. The boy ventures through, eventually seeing and running from a giant Enderman-like creature. The series is incredibly popular, with that episode alone gaining 67 million views. Skinamarink is a 2022 indie horror film about two children who wake up in the middle of the night to find their dad missing, and anomalies begin happening. The film is filmed very experimentally, with many shots being composed of very little, and it being lit intentionally dark and in many instances with just a CRT television. The film was also heavily inspired by analog horror and used the eeriness of liminal spaces as an important aspect. A dead mall is a mall that has been abandoned, whether by its consumer population or by the stores and owners. Walking around the uniform and empty malls can be familiar yet unsettling. The ghosts of all the people that enjoyed their time there, the absence of any future activity, and the coldness of being abandoned consumes the environment. Not only are these common, they also have some sort of popularity, with regular shoppers and trespassers exploring them and posting their findings to captive audiences. Minimalism as a design trend, while mostly dead, has left a trail of liminal spaces. Sterile and cold environments have created a new liminal, replacing the warm fluorescence bathing beige environments with blue LED light shining on smooth white walls and furniture. Sterile and coldness evokes a different feeling, a more hollow one than the warmth of grandma's living room. It's no coincidence that the trend gained popularity during the coronavirus lockdown. Nostalgic and warm feelings were extremely comforting, especially during a time of great isolation, which also happened to be a theme running throughout the phenomenon. Is this a dead trend though? Many turned to their lives and left the lonely aesthetic behind, with it also progressing into other things like dreamcore, weirdcore, and traumacore. All of these trends were essentially spin-off, but never quite reached the heights of popularity that Liminal Spaces did. There's a possibility of another uptick in interest with the Backrooms movie coming out, and I'm interested to see how this aesthetic, trend, term, etc. evolves.